For more analysis, we are joined by researcher Dr. Remi Piet, live from Paris. Thank you for joining us, and welcome to Asia One. Dr. Piet, we appear to be getting more mixed messages and no clear indication of whether peace talks are back on. How do you interpret the messages from both sides?
Well, it's obviously that there's different noise on different front. What's for sure is that the Trump administration has stopped bombing Iran for the last 2 nights, which leaves the possibilities for new talks and conversation. There's always negotiation on back channels. This never stops. Whether or not those will actually lead to any kind of result, whether or not the stopping of the bombing has been intensely done for the reinitiation of negotiations, and on which agenda is still obviously to be seen. The position of both Iran and Washington, D.C. are very far apart. At the same time as we see a potential restart of discussions between both, we also see discussions between Iran and Oman regarding the managing of the Strait of Hormuz, which is a central topic in the current conflict. And we also have a visit from Benjamin Netanyahu to Washington, D.C. So that actually it's a truce of potential very short term before either a large-scale renegotiation or large-scale reinitiation of the conflict.
And is there a possibility that this was a political decision in Washington to pause the fighting and allow oil prices to drop to appease U.S. voters? Because that's what we're hearing from Iran, that this was just political.
Well, it is obviously very volatile international gas and oil markets, and that impacts obviously the price at the gas station for American citizens. But the midterm elections are still a few months away from now. Decisions and of the next 48 hours is not really having an impact onto this. So I would not take it too strongly in terms of whether or not the Trump administration deciding for having more political support in the US. Iran is trying to have a specific rhetoric about the weakness of the Trump administration, which has some truth to it in terms of its domestic politics. But at the same time, the objective from Iran is to be able to have a large discussion and renegotiation, because it does suffer from economic strains and the lack of capacity to move forward with the closing of the Strait of Hormuz of its ports.
And what do you see happening with global shipping in the immediate future?
So in the immediate future, we've seen a drastic drop, as you documented, of how many ships are passing through the Strait of Hormuz, but also at the Bab el-Mandeb Strait into the Red Sea. Depending on what sectors you're looking at, you do have some of the ships that are actually going across, down to South Africa and back up, which is an increase of more than 7 days of shipping for some of the goods and having additional costs. In terms of shipping through the Strait of Hormuz, obviously this depends on the capacity to reduce the conflictivity of the area, and that really impacts much more natural gas exports and oil exports from a series of countries inside the GCC towards Asian countries. Depending obviously of the capacity to have new negotiation, and especially the agenda and the roadmap for those negotiations, including the Strait of Hormuz or reopening, will depend obviously the impact that it has on global shipping.
Of course, there's been a lot of focus on the bombings, but what about daily life for ordinary people, not just in Iran, but in Gulf countries as well?
Well, in Gulf countries, you have regular alerts, when missiles are being, shot at the different countries. This doesn't, impact too much, some of the industrial aspects of the production of gas and oil. The problem is the capacity to export these. There's very strong impact on the tourism sector in the UAE, especially Dubai, also Qatar and other countries, obviously. And when it comes to the daily life of everyone, I mean, there's some reassurance in terms of food security. We're not looking at a situation of medium scarcity, but there will be considerations of capacity to reprovision, and resupply on a series of goods in the near future if there's no solution to that conflict.
Tourism, have other aspects of business and economy been affected in the Gulf as well? And what can you tell us about that?
It has, obviously, and that actually reaffirms and re-strengthens the need for diversification of these countries. We see countries that have a large, financial capacity of investment outwards in different regions outside of the GCC. They have been, somewhat shy to do so over the last few decades and years, especially, investing into their own infrastructure and a series of events in the region. But that reinforced the necessity to be able to engage in foreign investment in different regions that will, create some proceeds, whether it's in the mining sector across Africa, in the agricultural sector, a series of data center and high technology. We're seeing more and more conversation about large sovereign wealth funds being engaged into those sectors that are so important to be able to diversify the economy away from oil and gas and away from the Strait of Hormuz itself. So that's something quite interesting to look at into the mid to long run, looking at those efforts for diversification, creation of wealth out of I'd say especially the mining sector and transformation sector out of commodities.
Dr. Remi Piet joining us there live from Paris. Thank you very much.